At least 4 Mexican journalists killed in under a month. What's making Mexico one of the world's most dangerous countries for journalists? And what does it mean for the country's democracy? You're watching Inside Story Americas from Washington. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu. There were at least 172 confirmed attacks against the media in Mexico last year. Article 19, a group promoting press freedom, alleges government officials were responsible for more than half of those attacks. The violence against journalists is unabated. Last month, reporter Regina Martinez, who often wrote about drug cartels, was found strangled in her home in the state of Veracruz. Within days, the mutilated bodies of 2 photojournalists was found in the same state. And just last week, a reporter's body was found stuffed into a garbage bag. In March, the murder of journalists was made a federal crime. A month later, Mexico's Congress approved a law providing protection for threatened journalists. But human rights organizations are skeptical whether the new laws will be implemented at the local level. They say state and municipal authorities often cave in to pressure from organized crime groups, leading to impunity. Caught between drug gangs and widespread corruption among police and government officials, many journalists have chosen self-censorship to stay alive. Al Jazeera's Rachel Levin interviewed one journalist who's been kidnapped and threatened repeatedly. He's asked us not to reveal his name for his protection.
Tell me about the scariest experience you've ever had as a journalist here.
I went to Michoacán because I got information from my sources that the Sinaloa cartel, run by El Chapo Guzman, was expanding its operations. A group of about 12 young kids between the ages of 14 and 17 with gold chains and rings surrounded me. They grabbed me and threw me into the Suburban. Then they started beating me and insulting me. They took me to a motel. I was there for 2 days.
What went through your mind when you saw these kids who were obviously involved with the cartel coming for you?
I thought a lot about my daughter. I started crying and begged for forgiveness and my life. One of them had a gun and hit me in the face and my joints. They punched my ears. I heard them laughing right before I lost consciousness. A colleague found and rescued me. My pants were completely soiled. I was in severe pain. I still have scars and I've had to have several surgeries.
Why can't the government protect journalists in Mexico?
Because the government is involved with the cartels. In Mexico, we have too much impunity and corruption. There'll always be an official who will tip off the drug traffickers. As long as there's no autonomy or independence for the people who are supposed to investigate these crimes, we're going to be left at the mercy of the criminals and the corrupt politicians. This is why so many of us don't even report the threats against us. It's not only a waste of time, it's because the police and the government are corrupt and involved with organized crime. So it's counterproductive.
Why do you continue to do this, knowing that the risks are so great?
I'm aware that at any moment I could be killed, just like a soldier or a policeman who knows that he's at war, but at least he can defend himself. But as journalists, our only weapon is a pen. I'll continue to do this because it's my obligation as a Mexican, as a citizen, as a father, as a son, and as a brother. We're not heroes, but we continue to report because it's our duty.
So what's the impact of these attacks on freedom of the press in the country? Fearing for their lives, several Mexican journalists have sought asylum. We're joined by one of them, Luis Horacio Najera, a veteran journalist who reported on government corruption and drug trafficking in Ciudad Juarez. We're also joined by senior advisor for the U.S.-Mexico Journalism Initiative at Woodrow Wilson Center, Dolia Estevez, and from Mexico City by Ricardo Gonzalez, Security and Protection Officer of the human rights organization Article 19. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Luis, I want to start with you because you have a very personal story. As we just reported there, you've been working in Ciudad Juarez. That's one of the most volatile areas in Mexico. There have been many, many attacks against journalists over there. You were forced to leave Mexico. You now live in exile in Canada. Tell us about your experience.
Well, I worked for my last 4 years working as a journalist in Mexico. I worked for Grupo Reforma, which is I would say one of the most influential newspaper groups in Mexico. Because of long time experience reporting on crime and drugs, I was assigned to not only make the coverage around Ciudad Juárez, so I move along the border, both sides covering, we call the hot spots, I mean, dangerous situations or big confrontation like in Nuevo Laredo, Tijuana, or other places. So in 2008, when the joint operation started in Chihuahua, the state of Chihuahua, I will say the level of threats increased. And at some point in September of 2008, I look around my surroundings. The level of threats spread into my family. My wife was threatened as well. And so that's the moment when I decided to leave.
Okay, well, let's look at the situation in Mexico. Now, press advocacy groups consistently say that Mexico is one of the most dangerous places for journalists in the world. And according to the Committee to Protect Journalists, at least 4 journalists and 1 media worker have been killed so far in 2012. In 2011, there were 7 confirmed killings of journalists. 2 journalists disappeared and remain unaccounted for. In 2010, 10 journalists were killed because of their work and 3 journalists disappeared. And in 2009, 8 journalists were killed and 1 went missing. Let's go to Ricardo Gonzalez in Mexico City. Ricardo, to what extent does public corruption, impunity, and even these media monopolies that exist in Mexico, to what extent do they contribute to this culture of violence? I mean, one of the shocking things that we've just been talking about is the fact that of those 172 murders that we talked about, more than half were at the hands of government agencies or state agencies.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you have these 3 elements, corruption, impunity, and this adds to a situation where the press is working without any means of protection. I mean, the story of Luis is a clear example of what the press is facing at the moment in several places, in several cities throughout Mexico. Impunity is one of the main issues. I mean, you just mentioned the alarming number of aggressions against the press, and none of them has been investigated, and none of the perpetrators have been brought to justice. And this is sending the incorrect message to future perpetrators. The situation is now as bad as it's not only affecting the free flow of information, but it's also affecting the quality of democracy in so many places and so many communities in Mexico, as zones of silence have been, imposed in many points of the country, where none of the information is coming out and none of the information produced from the national level is coming in. So what we have is mainly a crippled democracy at the moment in many places, not only in the north of the country, but also in the south and the center of the country. It is a problem not only for the press, but for the democratic system of Mexico.
Okay, well, Dolia, there you heard there, a crippled democracy in Mexico right now. And just one correction, it's not 172 murders last year, it's 172 attacks.
No.
Exactly. Nonetheless, this must leave something of an information black hole in Mexico right now.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I mean, the situation in Mexico against journalism and journalists and the ability to report freely without being, without fearing, has reached proportion crisis levels. It is very, very serious. I mean, I just can't start describing the way many of our colleagues, particularly in those areas controlled by the organized crime, where the law enforcement or federal authorities or local authorities are not in control or are part of the problem. So it is having an impact on reporting, as Ricardo said. In many places, reporters are not doing their job because they fear, and even if they don't do their job, they still get killed. And I think that there is a problem here, which is 98% of all crimes against reporters, and I'm sort of reluctant to put statistics or numbers because we're talking about human beings. I mean, this month of May, there were a number of reporters being killed just in one state. So we don't want to just add numbers. We just want to present a situation in which the situation has become worse. And you mentioned in the beginning that there was a federal law that was passed. It has not been passed, and it's not going to be the panacea. It's not a silver bullet solution for all the problems, because what I see is there is a lack of political will by the federal government, by the president, by President Felipe Calderon, who in many ways and in many instances has said it on the record that he believes that the media is a problem, that we, the media, contributes to the bad image Mexico has, which affects tourism and affects many parts of the economy. So my view and the view of many organizations that defend freedom of the press inside Mexico and outside Mexico is that the government, despite the fact that they said they are committed to fighting the crimes against journalism, has not done enough or very little or practically nothing in terms of prosecuting and putting in jail behind bars those who are killing reporters. So there's no cost. Right. And that sends a very strong message to keep going. Situation has definitely gotten worse. And there's only 6 to 8 more months left of this administration. And I'm not hopeful at all that anything is going to change. For the time being, the candidates the 3 presidential candidates have not expressed a strong desire or commitment to stop this situation.
Well, let me ask Luis about that. Have you found that, we've had this election campaign, we had this election. Has this issue been a priority for any one of the political parties?
No, it wasn't. The only
May
public...
I jump in?
I'll come to you in a moment there, Ricardo.
Just the only public statement that has been made so far, it's for the official candidate, Josefina Vázquez Mota, but she went to Veracruz, the state where all these 4 journalists recently have been murdered, and she said, okay, we're going to stop those who are attacking journalists, which is a very political and at some point I will say silly declaration if you are trying to convince someone to vote for you. Right. So and it going back to the point where Dolia said about the statistics and figures and numbers, at some point I have lost 6 friends, 6 colleagues here. The first one was José Ramírez Puente, 2000, Enrique Perea, 2006, Armando Rodríguez, 2008, and Roberto Mora in Nuevo Laredo in 2006. And just recently in Chihuahua, 2 colleagues, Javier Salinas and Javier Moya, they were to a bar just to get a drink. And suddenly a group of hitmen came, shot all the patrons inside the bar, and killed 13 people, these 2 journalists included. Now, going back to the figures and the facts, okay, some organizations said, okay, this is not related with the journalism work that this a victim was doing. But I mean, first, it's a human being. Second, it's a journalist. And who really knows, if we don't have enough investigation, who really knows the truth? I mean.
Sure. Okay, let's go to Ricardo in Mexico. Ricardo, you wanted to say something about the fact that none of the political parties brought this up as an issue.
Oh yes, I mean the fact is that we're in the middle of the campaigns, and I mean they have, as Luis mentioned, they have only tackled the issue just to simulate that they're actually interested in what is going on. But in reality, as the campaigns are, as the 3 candidates are in the campaign trail, the amount not only of violence against the press is on the rise, but also the forced displacement of journalists is rapidly increasing. For example, after the assassination of Regina in Jalapa, Veracruz, we have documented the flee of at least 8 journalists out of Veracruz. At the moment, in Veracruz, there's only 2 reporters crime reporters that are actually, reporting on what's going on in Veracruz. So, I mean, this is obviously working for the government because, I mean, that way, the public is not getting information regarding of the violence that is taking place in that state. They're not getting any information about the human rights abuses that are taking place by the armed forces in Veracruz as well. So there's an information deficit at the moment, and it is also promoted by the authorities, by the local authorities. I mean, just imagine if a public official tells you that they are unable to help you out, unable to protect you, and their only recommendation will be that you should just abandon your house, abandon your family, and just get out of the country. I mean, that is actually, I think, one of the worst messages that a state can send, to the press. I mean, there is not any kind of protection means in terms of emergency. I mean, obviously, impunity is an issue, but at the same time, there is not a prevention mechanism to react to the threats that are being faced by journalists.
Right. Okay, Dolia, I mean, it's one thing for political parties to ignore this crisis. It's one thing for politicians to just wring their hands and say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. But what is Mexican public opinion? Where does that stand on this issue, especially when it comes to freedom of the press?
Well,
one moment, Ricardo, I'll get to you.
Depends on, I mean, Mexico City, one thing we have to realize when we talk about this issue is that it's the attacks against the media. It's not all over the country. It's not generalized. It's in a lot of the states, but those are the states where there are turf wars between different cartels. Right. It's the northern, is Veracruz, Michoacán. It's the other states in the south, Sinaloa, obviously Baja California, but not Mexico City. The media in Mexico City, which is where the monopolies are concentrated, where the most powerful opinion makers are based, they have not been affected this bad. Of course, the correspondent for Proceso, which is a national, well-recognized, as a matter of fact, international recognized magazine, was killed in Veracruz, not in Mexico City. So therefore, public opinion is divided. Maybe Ricardo knows better. Yeah. I don't know if there's been polls that show what public opinion what they say about the fact that reporters are being killed, and that this is affecting the ability to report. Because I must say that in Mexico City, the press is very free to say what, pretty free actually. Yeah. There's a lot of very strong opinions against the government, against the monopolies, but you can see that, for instance, in Laredo, where El Mañana, which is the main print newspaper.
Yeah, I want to actually talk about that newspaper in a moment. Luis, you wanted to say something? Yeah,
regarding this issue about the social response on this issue. One of the things that I most, I criticize, it's the fact that probably because I live, or I used to live in the northern, in the border with US, but so far the only, I will say, big demonstration against the assassination of journalists were in, I think it was the year 2010, which Los Queremos Vivos March. Sadly, I don't know, Ricardo was there, I wasn't there, but so far, the information that I collect from several media was that the majority of the participants were journalists. Yeah. And some members of, let's say, NGOs and people at some point affiliated with journalism. However, where's the society? And that's one of the biggest concerns that I have. I don't know if society is ignoring the facts.
Ricardo, I'll come to you in a moment.
Or I don't know if people it's unaware, or they have no awareness of that.
All right. You know, one of the things that a number of newspapers and journalists are doing right now to basically protect themselves is that they're engaging in self-censorship. And I just want to look at some examples of self-censorship prompted, by this fear of aggression. In September of 2010, a newspaper in Ciudad Juarez, one of the world's most violent cities, as we've been reporting, published a front-page op-ed. In it, they asked the drug gangs, "What do you want from us?" And just this month, another newspaper in the border city of Nuevo Laredo, which we mentioned, El Mañana, published a similar piece saying, this newspaper, appealing to the understanding of public opinion, shall not, for the time being, publish any information about the violent disputes taking place in our city and other regions. The editorial board of this company has come to this unfortunate decision forced by circumstances that we are all aware of and due to the lack of conditions for the free exercise of journalism. And, we have another clip here which was featured in a documentary called Forced Silence, made by Article 19, Free Press, Unlimited and World Press Photo. After several journalists who were covering a prison riot in July of 2010, the channel Televisa canceled the airing of one of their programs. Let's take a look at what the television station said at the time. Let's watch this.
Soy Denise Merker y como todos los jueves estamos en punto de partida. Este jueves, sin embargo, estoy con ustedes tan solo para informarles, con profundo dolor, que condiciones extraordinarias han impedido que el equipo de Punto de Partida integre y emita el programa de esta noche. Esta es una decisión de la empresa Televisa y de todos quienes aquí trabajamos. No es mucho lo que en este momento le puedo adelantar sobre las circunstancias que nos llevan a cancelar el programa de hoy. Lo que le puedo decir es que el lunes pasado, periodistas y reporteros de este y otros medios de comunicación fueron secuestrados.
Well, let's go to Ricardo in Mexico City. It seems that journalism is at the mercy of these drug cartels and some government agencies for that matter. How widespread would you say is this practice of self-censorship in Mexico?
Oh, it's widespread. I mean, we have registered this kind of practice as the only means of protection in many parts of the country. And it is not necessarily related to fear of any reprisal from coming from the organized crime, but also coming from the government. When they, for example, if they use the word feminicide, for example, in a story, they will most likely will get a phone call from the government asking either to just take down the story from the website, or they were actually asked for the journalist to be fired. And I think I'd like to link this to the absence of the social support regarding what is going on. And I think that, let's not forget that, media has joined a relatively more freedom since 2000 after the electoral victory of President Vicente Fox. I mean, there has been a change in the media landscape, but the main problems has persisted. For example, the monopoly among, mainly two main holdings, Televisa and TV Azteca.
Right.
And also, there's a lot of close relations between media owners and the government.
Yes, of course.
And that also has affected the safety of journalists. I mean, most recently there has been some protests led by students, university students, against one of the candidates. And one of the main demands was actually to uphold the right of information of society. And they were asking directly Televisa, one of the main television channels, to stop manipulating the information. And I think that could be the start of a better relation and understanding of the importance of the work of the press. I mean, I do agree with Luis. There has been many manifestations and protests against the violence.
Sorry, Luis, go ahead.
Just to link these two issues, the media monopoly and this clip that we saw. I had, because of our common situation, I had contact with Alejandro Hernandez, who was one of the cameramans kidnapped in Torreon, and also with the reporter, his reporter, who works for, at some point works in Ciudad Juarez, and he went to Mexico. Well, Alejandro told me that one of the things that the government used them to present them as a triumph. When they were released by their own criminals at some point they said, okay, you fulfill the requirements, and you air this video where they interview a police officer. Okay, you show them, okay, it's done. Right. So they freed them. But the government took them and presented as a huge triumph, and they start to fear because their faces were all over the country.
Well, Luis, I'm sorry, we have 5 seconds left. I just want to put this last question to Luis as well. I mean, we heard about your personal experience moving out of the country, moving to Canada. Do you believe that you will be able to return to Mexico and practice your profession again?
No.
You will not?
No.
Okay, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for joining us. And that is it from the team here in Washington, D.C. for now. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, where you can find more information about the program. And of course, we want to hear from you. Tell us what stories you think we should be covering. Send your ideas directly to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Thanks for watching.